let's just jump straight into it, Alfred and Sagar. A lot of parents tend to think of esports and gaming in general as a waste of time, even in this day and age. So, how can it be a lucrative career?
Okay, so I think we are in the same phase as we were probably in the 80s or 90s, where parents used to tell kids that you have no career playing football.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I grew up in a time where my father said that, you got to go and get a degree, you got to be a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer. Typical Indian family, right?
All right.
Yeah. So, same thing now, different game, different application. Kids are no longer outside playing a lot of football or badminton. They're a lot more in their house, in their couches, playing games, either FIFA, Counter-Strike, Mobile Legends, PUBG. So parents think that they are just sitting and gaming and there's no future. But there are a lot of kids in Malaysia who have earned millions of ringgit gaming, either by streaming or playing competitively. Yeah.
So, there is a future in this. It can be a lucrative career, Sagar.
Yes. just because it is not about mainly playing, a game. You have, casting, streaming. You have a whole wide range of these things. Events, gaming, events. So when you look at it from a value chain, now it actually becomes an industry. It becomes a sport. So yes,
Right.
there's definitely a future.
Now, so we know for a fact now it's not like back in the day where you're playing Snake on your phone, right? So there's a whole other level of thing here. So it's not just about playing a game. What traits must we as parents look out for when deciding whether to allow our child to participate in esports?
Right. So one of the few key ones is, how is your child able to balance life and also, gaming? Right. I think that balance is key. And having the kid being able to have that discipline, that, concentration, because you still need to go to school, you still need to do your homework, but that trait of being able to balance, the trait of being able to make good, decisions,
Right.
that's key. That's something you got to look at. And then you have all the other, physical stuff, being able to be healthy, being able to, concentrate. I think these are some of the traits that tend to come up.
Yeah. So I think parents have a very significant role to play. It's not like you can send them to a football field and then you train and then you leave them and come back. No, you have to journey with them. You got to sit down with them and watch streamers play, and then understand what are the type of communications that go on in the chat. So kids have to be. So what we think should be best is, besides just learning how to game and strategy, they also need to learn values and principles in terms of how do you communicate, how do you build teamwork and stuff like that. So the value and principles actually make the player a better one.
Because it's not just playing. It's
Yeah.
like a sport right now.
Yeah,
And if you want to
full-blown.
play a sport, you have to commit,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
So that's that, interesting thing. Parents see the kid staring into a screen, pressing a few buttons, or, a joystick, if that's even a thing now, right? That's all parents see. They go like, why isn't my kid talking to other people like, any other normal kid? But again, the kids are still communicating. It's just that they are talking through a headphone and a, microphone to someone else that's seated across
Right.
the world. So all of these things are still happening. It's just the platform has changed. But to the eyes of the parent, my kid is still looking at a screen and pressing a few buttons.
So the parents also need to change in a way.
The parents need to change the mindset. They have a huge role to play if Malaysia wants to make an esports champion, because it comes all the way from the top to the bottom. So if the parents actually encourage the child and say, hey, you spend 2 hours doing your homework, and then you spend 2 hours training, then you go outside and get some exercise done. And, if you're gaming all the time, you probably have some eye coordination.
Yeah.
You need to improve, take care of your eyesight. You need to take care of your hands, your wrists, your fingers. So there's a lot of stretching, a lot of exercise to do. Is also diet. Are you eating just junk food sitting on the couch?
Yeah.
Or are you eating healthily and living healthily? So it's like a full athlete process.
Right.
Yeah. It's not like like we used to play Tekken in the arcade and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
we go back. No, it's not like that.
Exactly. I was just about to get to that
Yeah.
because if you think about it, there are differences between casual gamers who think they are pros, and I suppose it's the same as those guys who play futsal all the time, but they don't take care of their diet. But then
Yeah.
they think that they can be Lionel Messi in a
Yeah.
way, right? But there's also something to think about when it comes to studying and having a good education, because you guys mentioned that. Because education, whatever it is a must for our children. So how can we ensure that our children, gets the best of both worlds? So gaming and studying. You mentioned maybe 2 hours this and that, but how do you guys do it?
In our boot camps, we run a ESL certified boot camps. How we do it is, it starts off with gaming and strategy. The coach first understand what the child does when he games, how he reacts, and how he emotionally behaves. After the gaming part, then we have the soft skills part. So the soft skills is our unique proposition to the market, where we teach them how to communicate. We teach them that it's not right to bully your friends or your competitors online, teamwork, and we instill values and principles. So values and principles will define the kid from the inside out, rather than with fear and punishment, how most parents do from the outside in. So that's the difference in terms of how we actually mold the child.
And also there are certain values, certain traits and competencies that gaming and schooling, studying has actually in common. So if we help a kid understand how they can transfer skills from gaming into studying into gaming, then I think you'll be able to bridge both. Because if you take, for example, when I was a kid, I used to drum. So I would always drum when I'm studying. And my mom would go like, is this guy playing music or is this guy studying? But my book is open,
Right.
my hands are moving. Occasionally I reach out for the guitar. But if they were able then to help me relate both of that together, because it takes immense concentration to game, how can we teach our kids now to apply that concentration into studying? Because gaming requires you to remember keystrokes, remember strategy, remember all of that. How can we apply that into studying now? And how can we get the skills over on this side, studying being applied into the gaming part, structure and things like that? So I find if parents are able to be curious enough to just spend a few minutes with the child, watching what the child is gaming, just trying to understand what's going on. Hey, what are you doing there? Why are you shooting this? Just trying to get into that space. I think then you kind of get the right to influence them on, hey, how do you apply this into your studies now?
Yeah.
I think that conversation needs to happen, and that's what we try to do in our boot camps.
I think also the worry is that a lot of parents have seen how it was before, where kids would spend endless amounts of time playing, and then they don't study, and then that goes to the education, the certificates or whatever that you're supposed to get in school. That goes nowhere.
Yeah.
They always constantly worry. So when you organize boot camps, do the parents ever come up to you and say, how long will they be playing? What's their schedule like? They need to go for tuition and stuff like this.
Yeah, so we actually pre-plan the entire boot camp. We have a structure and a timetable. So you game, and then you do some soft skills, and then you take a break. We try to minimize to about 20 minutes to half an hour screen time for the child, because more than that is not good for their eyes and their lifestyle. And then we take a break, then we do some burpees, we do some squats, we do some exercise. We try to get them physically active as well, because it's all part of the component. If you're not mentally fit, you cannot game.
Right.
Yeah, so you need to be physically and mentally fit to be able to game at a very high level. So it's all in a process.
Yeah.
But there's definitely an elephant that we need to put in the room, that gaming has a bad reputation
Yes.
from yesteryears.
Yeah.
are we trying to break it? I think it'd be futile to break that notion. But what we are trying to do is show a new way of doing things, a new way of gaming. So it's almost a generation of gamers that has passed. In fact, 2 or 3 generations have passed. And now what do we do with the young generation that we have? So our starting point are kids from like 9, 10 years old upwards, where we now get to wire it from the word go. But yes, there is a lot of effort that needs to be done in order to legitimize this whole gaming, industry, because that stigma of cyber, cafes is still there. Licensed, not licensed. Why are cyber cafes so dark? It's all of that, right? That's a hard one to break. So we decided to let's just start a new movement instead.
Because you're right about the stigma. The image that a lot of parents would get in their mind is this a kid who hasn't showered for a few days, sitting in front of a computer. He's got a pile of soft drink cans next to him, and he's eating nothing but junk food, right? How do you change that?
And that is true. Unfortunately, at some point of time, that was true, right? And I think changing that would require for parents to start getting curious. I think that would be the number one trait. To say my kids are never going to get into it, that's a risk. Because when they go to school, they're going to spend 6-7 hours with their friends. So although my dad bought a computer for us when we were young, I still distinctly remembering my parents trying to convince the guy that came to install the computer, how can you remove the pre-installed games? And they were like, what, Minefield and those type of games. I'm like, so I started gaming in that sense, playing Sonic and stuff like that at my friend's house, Ram, and it was at his house that we started playing stuff like this. So the kids are probably going to get into it at some point or another because their friends are into it. So what do you do? Do you try to fight it? Do you try to control it, or do you try to now influence it?
Yeah, because I think what is really on parents' minds is trying to find that balance, because studies is still important. So based on your experience, how important is an education versus training to play a game? I mean, what should the balance be? Because if you think about it, there have been a lot of successful professional sportsmen in other sports who gave up on studies and then they became very successful. Sometimes people see that and say, hey, I can do that. But that's maybe 1% or maybe 0.1% of the people who try. So it's an important thing. How should that balance be?
So before I answer that one, right, so I'm just going to just add on to some of the things Sega was saying earlier, that you see, if you send your kids to the football field near your house to play football in the evenings, there are also a lot of bad hats there, sitting, smoking or drinking and doing stuff like that. You still send your kids to play football. You still send your kids to go and play badminton in a park far away from your house, and you don't know what's going to happen. So likewise, if you send them to the cyber cafe, there's also risk, right? So, but to minimize those risks, you have schools and organizations like us that want to create a safe space, right, where there's a gap in our esports industry, a safe space for kids to come and learn how to game, how to train, and how to be better individuals. So that's what we are trying to advocate. Rather than sending you to a cyber cafe, which is not bad, but you do not know who's going to appear, you send them to us, and then we ensure a safe space and an environment for them to grow in. So
so it's a training center more so than a lepak space in a way.
Yes.
Yeah, you lepak, you hang out with good guys, some bad guys, you learn some good values, good principles. That's what we're trying to infuse into the children, right? So when they grow up, they will know right and wrong.
Right. So what's the balance like? I mean, how often should they be training? Should they be training before school and then after that go to school and then after train again? Because that's what I did when I trained for tennis, right? So I did before school, go to class, and then train again. Wow. But my mind wasn't on school. My mind was on tennis. I wanted to be on the tennis court. It's going to be the same thing here, right?
Yes.
So where's that balance? How do you find it?
I think Sega will take that question,
so
because I was more on football, no school.
So I think the balance will always be a state of balance, because there's always different kid will need different amount of time in each of these sports, right? But there's one thing I definitely have to say: the priority of a child while you're growing up is your studies. That is your priority. There's no ifs and buts about it. But what happens when you have a child that shows interest in a sport? You tend to expose him to a little bit more training. You tend to expose him to a routine. So I would say find your balance in that. You decide how much time your child needs to be studying, how good is him or her is in terms of their schooling. Do they have enough time to do their homework and all of that? And based on that, you then decide training, tuition, and all of that with regards to the sports. So it's hard to say it's a one size fit all, but know your child well enough to say how much time does my child need for studying, and now how much time do I need to dedicate to this sport called gaming,
Right.
esports, right?
Again, it's about parents getting more involved.
Yes. Parents are key to any child's success. Parents are key.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I suppose immerse yourself in your child's life,
absolutely,
right?
100%. No parents, no kids. No kids, no parents. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned this slightly earlier. Like most of everything, practice makes perfect. So how can we encourage our child to improve their skills when they might only be thinking about, I want to play? What's all this about strategy stuff? Because you mentioned that there's a lot more stuff than just going in all guns blazing in a way. And then you said after 3 hours or however amount of time, you have to stop. But they obviously want to continue because they're like, no, I just want to play. How do you do that? How do you manage that? Because you want practice to.
My father had taken the rotan. These days, you don't use the rotan. I would say that if the parents are involved with their everyday activities with their kids, then there's always ways to motivate them and inspire them. And if you actually spend some time with the kids watching streamers, right, professional gamers game, then you can have a conversation with your child and say, hey, what is he doing that you are not doing? Are you watching this and are you learning something, or are you just watching this and wasting the electricity bill? So what are you doing? So then you have a conversation with your child. Then you can say, like how we watch, for example, Mohamed Salah play, or Sadio Mane, or how does Liverpool lift the cup? Yeah. So
you had to bring up the Liverpool stuff. Sure, okay.
Yeah, of course. Oh, come on, 30 years. Okay, but you see, you look at the life of professional players, and you will tell your child if he's keen in playing football. You see, he goes to school in the morning, he comes back, he trains, he does his homework, then he trains again in the evening. So you use examples of really good professional players with good values as examples to motivate and inspire the child. So if you want to earn millions of dollars like them, then you have to be a little bit more structured, a little bit more disciplined in how you run your life. So it is like hand to a glove, and parents and child, relationship.
But how many kids can do that? Be focused that way?
I think we are finding there are more and more kids that are able to do that. So we are finding parents actually starting to encourage kids to find that balance, to say, okay, if you want to game, what are you willing to do before you start gaming? What are you willing to do after you game? So we were speaking to a parent the other day, and he said, okay, can you tell me what type of conversations are you having with your friends on online, because this was during MCO,
right,
and having that conversation with the kid and saying, okay, so if you're talking about all of this with your friends, when are you going to spend time talking with us now?
Wow.
Family.
Fantastic.
So they said, okay, dinner time, there is no phones involved, there's nothing else involved except food, and let's talk, right? So it's finding those moments when you can relate to your kid and just making it part of your natural life. There will be a tipping point when you'll find your kid is becoming an athlete in this. Then naturally they will be spending more time in the sport itself, right? So you will find that you are that you are spending more money with your kid in terms of getting them the right gear, getting them the right trainers, getting them the right coach. I think there's something else that I'd like to add is, can we find our kids good mentors and coaches out there? It could even be a family member. It could be a friend from your work circle. I think that is the element that is key as well. So I'm not always hearing my parents' voice speaking to me, because we think we are giving them advice as parents. They will think that
He's just
they
nagging.
are being nagged or corrected, right? So how can we add another element coming into it? It could even be a grandparent. We never know, right? Because I think skills in life, skills in gaming, there's a lot of times when it actually merges. The trouble starts is when we just try to separate our kids' lives or even our own lives into, this is only entertainment, this is only gaming, this is, family. How can we start to merge this and just call it life?
Now, speaking of life, what is the lifespan of a gamer? I mean, if you look at sports, is it similar to other athletes? In sports, it depends on how much your body can cope, and at a certain point, once you hit your mid-30s, you're starting to slow down. So how early should you start, and at what point should there be some plan for retirement?
Wow, I think that's where the industry is still trying to figure itself out. You are finding people as early as teens, becoming really successful, making money, winning, competitions, and then you have the late 20s, you have the early 30s that's still at the helm of their career.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think, as with most sports, you will tend to find other roles within the value chain. When from a sports person you would become a champion, you become a spokesperson at some point, right? But now the industry is starting to see that. You're starting to see the first few generations now starting to become the spokesperson, starting to own companies that create events, starting to run tournaments for gamers and things like that. But that's a very interesting question. I think in the next 5 to 10 years we'll start to see that.
I think we can safely say that, like any other sport, you should start as young as possible, right? So anytime between 8 to 10 years old will work, and you can play as long as you are as sharp and as fast as your competitor. So if you are 35 and if you are still fast and your mind works as fast as your opponent, you can still game. Roger Miller played at 49 in a World Cup.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So what stops any child from playing to whatever age he can or she can and still win? Yeah. So there's no limits or boundaries, right? So it's all in your mind.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there a story of a particular successful gamer in Malaysia who started out very, very young? Who is that? What's his story or her story?
So there's actually a lot of players, right? So there are a few that actually are very successful. They started off maybe about 5-6 years ago. They were playing Dota. They probably earned among the top 3 Malaysian players. They probably have about $6 million in their bank.
What?
Yeah.
I should. Can I get into this? Okay.
Yeah. So among the top 3 Malaysian players, between all 3 of them, they have about 6 or 7 million ringgit winnings. They play for professional clubs in Europe and in China, and so what actually we try to do differently from other bootcamp, besides just you got a game, and then when you game and then you play and then you win, and then when you can't play anymore, you have nothing else to do. So that is already happening to some of our athletes in different sports, right? So what we want to do is we're going to tell you when you come for our boot camps. So you are a good gamer. This is where you can improve. You are a average gamer, but you have an extra skill in streaming. You have an extra skill in design and works. You can build merchandise line. You can become a caster because he's like JD. Right. Yeah. You can speak on the mic. You can talk. You can, create and entertain people, and you're going to get paid a lot of money doing this stuff.
Right.
So it's like a football club. It's a whole ecosystem. You can be a trainer. You can be a talent scout. You can be a team manager. You can do merchandise. You can do events. You can do marketing. You can do PR. You can be a physio. You can be a dietitian. You can be the guy that sets up the tech for a player. So before a professional player comes, he's got someone that sets up the tech for him.
Right.
So there's so many variables, so many career opportunities. So it is a whole new world.
Right.
Really, literally.
Stories about a kid you want to share?
Is there one, like, how high up are Malaysians when it comes to a global stage, where do we stand? And is there one that actually got up to the global stage?
So we have quite a number of local teams who does very well regionally, but there are local players that play for international teams. They have been scouted for, they have been picked to play and represent teams. There was one kid that helped a team in Europe win a Dota. The prize money was $24 million.
Jeez.
Really, $24 million. So
How young did he start this?
when he won, he was 22.
And he must have been playing for years even before
Yeah,
that.
I think he was playing since he was 12 or 14 years old, and 8 years later he became world champion. So there's another guy, Faris Zakaria. He's a local guy, so he plays for a local esports team, but he makes bulk of his money streaming on Facebook and YouTube.
When you say streaming, that means it's just playing and then explaining what you're doing?
You're just playing, and people are just watching you play.
Right.
Yeah, people are just sitting and watching you play. So you become a streamer, right? And sometimes you can share ideas, share strategies, and you build a community around your streaming viewers, right? So what he also does is, like on his Instagram, he's got like close to 900,000 followers.
Wow.
Yeah, he's like a teenager, man. He's a young kid. And he has another Instagram profile where he designs and sells his own line of merchandising. That has got 100k followers.
Malaysian kid,
Faris. His call sign is Solos. So you see, there's a huge potential. There are a lot of talented young Malaysian kids who has potential, where sometimes are suppressed because parents do not see the big picture. Yeah. So we want to try and explain this to parents as well as children, right? That it is something they need to work together. We can't separate the parents away from the child or the child away from the parents. It's something that works as a team.
Right. Actually, tell us about what you guys do. Tell us about CyberState and your efforts in inculcating esports, not gaming, not just like playing it like just a game, like actual esports in children. So you mentioned a little bit about some programs already. What specifically do you guys do?
Okay, so what CycleState is passionate about is the livelihood of children. Okay, so the Malaysian government is actually putting in a lot of effort and money into esports, and there's a huge gap at the grassroots level. So we are stepping in to fill that gap at grassroots. So we have coaches and we have signed an exclusive partnership with ESL Gaming, if not the best globally, one of the best. Right, and they are going to certify our boot camps. So we have coaches that are going to teach you how to game, how to strategize, and how to work as a team or individually in the respective games you play in. We also have a soft skill coach who specializes in training kids, adding values and principles into their lives and teaching them how to build teams, teamworks, being a leader, communication, and we are the first boot camp, if I may say, that is an all-inclusive boot camp, right? So that means, what it means is, to parents out there, is it is a boot camp where it is catered and crafted and designed for boys and girls to be in the same boot camp.
Oh, okay.
We also have their soft skill coach, who is an expert and specializes in helping to train and build and communicate with kids with different kind of challenges. So
As in special needs kids?
special need kids or different kind of challenges.
Right.
Yeah, so in fact, we ran an event last year. We were part of an event last year where we had kids with autism come and join us as well. And one of the kids had not left their home in about a year.
Yeah.
And you know, so just because his friends now are in this tournament, he actually came out to play. And he made it to the quarterfinals, I think.
And he was only 14 years old, and he was playing against the kids who were like 18 and 19 years old. So that was a huge achievement.
What should a parent look for in a child who they think might have a gaming ability?
It's a good question. I think first of all, how curious the kid is into this whole, gaming part, and also the second thing is how are their hand-eye coordination? What type of training will they need for that? Because no kid is born an expert at anything, right? They are groomed into something. So I think instead of seeing at a point of finite skills, is to say what is the level of interest, and now see how we can develop these certain skills. Because our focus is not just at people who are good at what they do, but people who want to start getting into this industry as well. So I'm struggling to say that the skill level needs to be at a certain point, but I'm saying is, do your kids want to develop their skills, and then we will work with them.
Right.
You see, we can't force them to do something they don't like or can't do. Like my father sent my brother and me for piano classes. I'm tone deaf. I can't keep time. I can't play anything, and I can't sing to save my life. So he wasted 6 months of fees sending me and saying, no, you can play, you can play, you got to do this. No, so my brother, musically very talented, he made it off musically, but I said, sorry pa, I got to go to the football field. So parents need to sit down with the kids, spend some time and try and recognize what their strengths or weaknesses are, and then
but you see, he had to do that 6 months.
Yes.
In order for you and him to figure out that wasn't your thing. If he didn't do that 6 months, you just won't know, right?
Yeah.
So even in this, if a certain game doesn't work for your kid, try another game. So that's the beauty of this. There's a variety of games out there as well that you can play in terms of this whole industry, from Dota to PUBG, you name it, right?
Mobile Legends, FIFA.
Yeah. But don't push your kid into something just because you like it. Don't push him into it, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Now you've got a weekend boot camp coming up in August. What will this boot camp do for our kids?
It will actually, because it's a level 1 boot camp, so what we will do is, the first half of the boot camp is, we let the kids play the game. It's a PUBG mobile game, and then the coach will sit down and identify what their strengths, their weaknesses are, and whether they are really good at what they're doing or where they need to improve. So it is like a exploring introduction kind of classes, and then after that we will go to the soft skills segment. That's where we try to build the essence of principles in the child. We try to infuse that in them, and we help them to understand that how do you communicate with your teammates, how do you lead a team, how does teamwork, stuff like that.
So if you want to introduce your kid to something like this, this is the best bootcamp to go to.
This would be not only the best, one of its kind, where the syllabus and the structure in our boot camps are completely different from what the market has to offer. And the best part is, after you finish 5 levels, the kid's going to get ESL certified, and that will make any child or parent proud.
Perfect. Okay. Guys, thank you so much for having a chat with us.
Thank you, JD.
We're looking forward to some world champion gamers from Malaysia.